3 years old, and the question this kid asks his father is, where is the whole world?
He was afraid his own mind was an explosion.
So he did what some kids do when the inside gets too loud. He retreated into books, into science fiction, into the Encyclopedia Britannica, the whole thing, cover to cover, not to become smart, to find out if the world made sense.
And 60 years later, that same child is building rockets, electric cars, brain-computer interfaces, buying one of the world's largest communication platforms, and the world is still arguing about whether he makes sense.
Phew. Yeah, Elon Musk. Buckle up.
Welcome to Discourse, where we have a friendly chat about important stuff. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Andre. And I want to say up front, last episode we covered Steve Jobs, and we tried to hold that book, honestly, not as a celebration, not as a cancellation. We're going to do the same thing today with a man who is arguably even more polarizing and deserves the same honesty.
Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson, published 2023. Isaacson spent 2 years following Musk, access most journalists only dream of, and what he produced is, once again, not a verdict, it is a portrait. And portraits are supposed to be complicated. Let's get into it.
So, Musk grows up in Pretoria, South Africa, apartheid era, and Isaacson is very deliberate about this context, because the society Musk is born into is one that has officially legislated that some people don't count, that some realities are acceptable and others aren't. And Musk, who is already an outsider in his own school, getting beaten up regularly for being strange, grows up in a world where the official version of reality is visibly, provably wrong.
Which is perhaps the most important early environment for someone who will spend his entire life refusing to accept that things have to be done the way they've always been done. Isaacson traces the origin of what Musk calls first principles thinking, the method of stripping a problem all the way back to its fundamental physics, its most basic truths, and asking why we are doing it this way at all.
The rocket example is the one that stops me every time. He wants to go to Mars. He goes to Russia to buy rockets. The Russians, and I would love to have been in that room, laugh at him. They literally mock him. And then they triple the price. Most people, you thank them for their time, you go home, you accept that rockets are expensive, and Mars is a dream.
Musk gets on the plane home and starts calculating. Not how do I get the money to buy their rockets? What are rockets actually made of? What does the raw aluminium cost? The steel, the fuel, the electronics? And when he gets to the bottom, he finds that the materials cost of a rocket is roughly 2% of what the aerospace industry was charging. The rest was legacy, assumption, the cost of nobody ever asking why.
2%. 98% of the price was nobody questioning the process. So he builds SpaceX from scratch and eventually gets the cost of putting a kilogram into orbit down by a factor of 10.
And the lesson there, the extractable, applicable lesson, is not start a rocket company. The lesson is most of the price you are paying for anything in any area of your life is legacy cost. It is the cost of no one ever asking why. What would happen if you went all the way to the bottom of the thing you are most accepting as fixed and asked whether it actually has to be that way?
What would you find at 2%?
Now, Musk did not arrive at this risk tolerance alone. Isaacson is very deliberate about tracing it through his maternal family line. His grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was one of the most extraordinary supporting characters in this whole biography.
Haldeman was a chiropractor from Canada who packed up his whole family, 5 children, and moved to South Africa in the 1950s on nothing but faith that there was a better life somewhere else. Then he flew himself, single engine, no electronic instruments, across Africa and Australia multiple times, just to see if he could.
His motto, and Isaacson writes this as almost a family scripture, was live dangerously, carefully. 4 words that carry so much, because it is not recklessness, it is not bravado for its own sake, it is the deliberate, calculated, fully committed pursuit of something that most people won't attempt, combined with the discipline to survive it.
And Haldeman spent 12 trips searching for the lost city of the Kalahari, a mythical place. Probably doesn't exist, but he kept going. And I've been thinking about what that says. Because on one hand, that's a lot of effort for something that doesn't exist. But on the other hand, the 12 trips themselves, the navigation, the survival, the becoming that happens when you keep going towards something enormous, that's real, whether you find the city or not.
And Musk inherited that completely. Isaacson describes the founding of SpaceX as Musk's own lost city expedition. Not everyone believed it was real. Many of the world's smartest aerospace engineers told him he would fail. 3 rockets exploded on the launch pad. He kept going.
Which brings us to 2008, the Christmas miracle. And this is the part of the book, Chloe, that got me.
It's quite something.
SpaceX has just had its 3rd consecutive rocket failure. Tesla is hemorrhaging money during a global financial collapse. Musk is waking up screaming in his sleep. He's physically falling apart. And he has $30 million left. And he has to choose which company lives.
And he splits it. He puts the money into both. Not because he had a plan, not because the numbers made sense, because he could not let either of them die. And 3 weeks later, NASA awards SpaceX a $1.5 billion contract just before Christmas, days before the company would have ceased to exist.
Now, I need us to be careful here because this story can be read as just believe and it'll work out. And that is not the lesson. The lesson is that Musk had spent years building something real before the crisis hit. The foundation was there. The talent was there. The technology worked when the rocket didn't blow up. He wasn't betting on luck. He was betting on what he had already built.
Isaacson calls it, failure is irrelevant unless it is catastrophic, which is a line I want to sit with because most of us treat any failure as potentially catastrophic. We treat a setback at work as evidence of permanent incompetence, a failed relationship as evidence we are unlovable, a wrong turn as evidence we are lost. Musk's 3 rockets exploded, and the lesson he drew was, what do we fix for the 4th one? Quick pause. We just talked about first principles thinking, going all the way down to the fundamental truth of a thing and asking whether the assumptions on top of it are actually necessary. Here's a first principles question for you. Why aren't you subscribed to Discourse yet? Strip it back. Every week, a book, 2 people, a real conversation, something you can actually use. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell. That's the base truth. No legacy cost. Back to Musk.
She just first principle to CTA. We are growing over here. Let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
Okay, and now we got to talk about the part of this book that I think gets overlooked. Underneath all the rockets and the electric cars and the Twitter drama, there is a man who is profoundly, deeply lonely.
Isaacson is unflinching about this. The bullying at school wasn't casual. A gang of older students kicked Musk down a flight of stairs and beat him until he was hospitalized. For 2 weeks. He has permanent physical scarring from that incident, and Isaacson suggests it left something else. An intense need to understand the world, to control his environment through knowledge, because he couldn't control it through safety.
And the response to that loneliness, and this is the paradox I can't shake, is that he builds products for connection. The Tesla, the SpaceX Dragon. He says he wants humanity to wake up every morning with a sense of adventure. He says love is the ultimate answer. He says he cannot be happy without a serious companion. And then he works so hard and so relentlessly that he destroys the relationships he says he cannot live without.
Isaacson is honest about it. The failed marriages, the estrangements from children, the people who loved him and couldn't survive what being close to him actually required. And I find that genuinely sad, not as a criticism, as a tragedy, because here's a man whose stated motivation, at the largest scale, is preserving human consciousness, ensuring that love and connection persist in the universe, and in his own life, in the smallest circle. That is the thing he keeps losing.
And I think, and this is me thinking out loud, not Isaacson, I think that gap is the wound. The 3-year-old who asked, "Where is the whole world?" who got beaten down a staircase, who learned very early that the world is not safe at close range. So he makes himself large enough that nobody can make him feel that way again. And large enough is planetary scale.
Planetary scale as armor. That is one of the saddest and most human things I've heard said about anyone. Now, the philosophical center of Musk's entire project, and Isaacson presents it seriously, not dismissively, is what Musk calls the window of opportunity for consciousness. His argument is this: for 4.5 billion years, there was no intelligent life on Earth capable of leaving it. And then, for a cosmically brief moment, there was us. And that window, he believes, will not stay open indefinitely. Climate catastrophe, asteroid, nuclear war, uncontrolled AI. The window could close.
And his actual solution, is to make humanity a multiplanetary species. Not because Earth is disposable, but because you don't store all your data on one hard drive.
Musk has pulled at least part of humanity's gaze away from its narrow screens and pointed it at the magnificent science of the universe. Whatever else you think about him, there are children alive today who want to be aerospace engineers because of what SpaceX made visible. That is not nothing.
That is not nothing. Not nothing at all. Okay, so we've been in the big cosmic stuff. Let me bring it back to ground level, because the most immediately useful thing in this book, the thing that has nothing to do with billions of dollars or rockets, is the method, first principles thinking. And Isaacson shows it being applied not just in aerospace, but in every area Musk touches.
The question he always asks, and this is the one I want to leave the listener with, is what are we assuming that we don't actually need to assume? Because industries, organizations, lives accumulate assumptions the way ships accumulate barnacles, slowly, without anyone deciding, until the weight of unexamined "that's just how it's done" is heavier than the actual problem you're trying to solve.
And you don't need $1 billion to apply that. You need a relationship that keeps having the same argument. Strip it back to first principles. What do we actually both need here? What are we assuming that we've never questioned? You got a career that feels like a cage? First principles. What does this job actually require? What part of the cage is real, and what part did you build?
Musk's grandfather flew across Africa with no instruments because he believed in figuring it out as he went, guided by fundamentals and adaptability rather than by a map someone else drew. That instinct is available to everyone.
Live dangerously, carefully. 4 words. I keep coming back to those 4 words.
So, let's land. Elon Musk is, and Isaacson does not pretend otherwise, one of the most genuinely difficult people to synthesize a clean lesson from. The authoritarian management, the erratic public behavior, the human cost of his obsessions, all of that is in this book, not footnoted in the text.
And at the same time, the rockets are real. The cars are real. The reusable boosters landing themselves back on a pad in the middle of the ocean, that is real. Things that the aerospace establishment said could not be done. Because one person refused to accept the legacy cost of the question.
What I take from this book, my honest synthesis, is 2 things. First, the quality of your questions determines the size of your life. Musk's questions are planetary in scale, and so for better and worse is his life. If you want a bigger life, ask a bigger question. Not necessarily his questions, your own, but bigger than the ones you're currently comfortable with.
And second, the wound and the mission are often the same thing. The boy who was afraid his mind was an explosion built rockets. The boy who was beaten down a staircase and desperately needed the world to make sense went and built the infrastructure to change the world. Your wound is not a disqualification. It might be your entire brief.
Our question for the comments today, and this one is worth really sitting with before you answer. What is the assumption in your life that nobody is questioning, including you? One assumption, one place where you've accepted a price, a ceiling, a constraint, that's just how it is, that you've never actually taken all the way to the bottom. What would you find there if you did?
And if today shifted something, share this episode. Because there's someone in your life who was capped right now by an assumption they didn't even choose, an inherited belief about what they're worth, or what they're capable of, or what's possible for someone like them. Send them this.
First Principles starts with someone showing you that the price doesn't have to be what you've been told.
Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. Complicated, consequential, absolutely worth your time.
Entirely. I'm Andre,
I'm Chloe.
and this is Discourse.
Stay curious, ask bigger questions, and we'll see you next time.